Hi everyone, welcome back to Rosie, Revere Engineer. We're reading chapter 3. So if you're following along, we're starting on page 13. But before we start, I want to show you something. This is what's ahead in this chapter. I wonder what it's about. Okay. Rosie put on her helmet and Aunt Rose hit the switch. The cheese copter spluttered and twitched. It jumped and it bumped, and it shot into the air. And off they flew. They zoomed over the neighbour's garden. Woohoo! That's a doozy, said Aunt Rose. Indeed, Mrs. Lou's garden was a doozy. She was a master gardener, and it showed. In English, if you say something's a doozy, it means it's really good. Oh, that's a doozy. That's amazing. It showed that she was a master gardener. Master means fantastic. If you're a master Lego maker, that means you're amazing at it. Or a master Kennex designer. Each year, she planted flowers and grass and created a giant scene in her yard. Her plants looked from above like a giant goose. Daisies, marigolds, they painted the picture, so she used all the flowers and planted them so that actually when you looked at them it looked like a picture. That's really artistic. Tall, fluffy pampas stalks completed the scene. They swayed in the breeze and made the goose come to life. I can see pampa from here, but I can't really show you. Rosie looked down just as someone ran into the garden shed wearing a long duster, a big black hat, dark glasses and rubber gloves. It was Mrs. Lou. Rosie knew two things about Mrs. Lou. Number one, she was mysterious. Rosie never saw her outside during the day without a disguise on. And number two, she did not like Rosie. You know what's great about this though? She's an interesting character. There's no point in just having a boring character. Now we know that there's a problem in this story that Mrs. Lou doesn't like. Who? Rosie. Mrs. Lou never said that. But then she never said anything to Rosie. They were neighbours, but Mrs. Lou never even waved at Rosie. Once Rosie saw Mrs. Lou in the window and she waved, and Mrs. Lou closed the curtains. Wow, that's very rude. Rosie had another clue. All the neighbours knew that Rosie was an engineer. They left recycling treasure on the curb for Rosie. So that means on the outside of your road, you usually have a footpath. If you live in a house, you have a footpath, and then you have you call that the curb. And if you leave things out there, usually your big green trash can or rubbish bin, then the truck will come along one day a week and empty it for you. But also you can leave things out on the curb for other people if they want to take them. And maybe they'll reuse them or recycle them. So they left recycling treasures on the curb for Rosie, but not Mrs. Lou. She kept her recycling in wooden crates on her porch, on her veranda, the front of her house, instead of the curb. She didn't want Rosie getting to her recycling crates. Luckily, the recyclers, Bee and Bo their names were, sneaked the crates to Rosie's porch when she was at school. Rosie was glad they did. The crates were full of gears and wires and tools and broken motors. Mrs. Lou didn't like Rosie, but she sure had great recycling. Aunt Rose steered the cheese copter up and away. Woohoo! I do love a fancy garden, said Aunt Rose. Rosie looked back down at Mrs. Lou's garden shed just as a pair of gloved hands snapped the curtain shut. Snapped the curtain shut. Interesting. Hey, what's this? Wonder what this has got to do with the next chapter. So now we have 3 main characters, and one of them doesn't like the other one. Chapter 4. The cheese copter flew past the school, and Iggy Peck bridge to the edge of town. Do you remember Iggy Peck had to make a bridge? Have you read Iggy Peck Architect? He had to make a bridge, right? Remember, his class went on a trip. If you haven't read it, you should read it. So they went, the cheese copter flew past the school and Iggy Peck bridge to the end of town. Aunt Rose pointed at an old white house with a wide porch. That down there is where we're going. They landed with a thump and climbed out of the cheese copter. The house needed a new coat of paint, and the yard was wild compared to Mrs. Lou's really organised one. We're here, said Aunt Rose. Where is here? Said Rosie. I have a better question. Who is here? Said Aunt Rose. Just then the screen door flew open and a tall woman stepped onto the porch. She wore a red and white polka dot headscarf, a bit like this on her head. Oh, it was just like the one that Aunt Rose had given Rosie. Well, Rosie wears this headscarf. Aha, look at the front. There's another character. Curious. It's about time you got here, said the woman. Boss is getting antsy. Antsy. What else is new? Said Aunt Rose. When someone's getting antsy, they're getting a little bit annoyed, a little bit jumpy, a little bit impatient. And Rose said, what else is new? In other words, obviously Boss is always like that. I wonder who Boss is. Maybe stop and have a little prediction. Who do you think Boss is? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They went into the house. The living room was faded, but cozy. A set of old photos rested on a pump organ in the corner. It's a type of piano, almost. They were black and white pictures. That means they were very old. Before they managed to create photographs that had colour on them, you used to only have black and white photographs. They were of a woman working on enormous airplanes. A familiar face caught Rosie's eye. It was Aunt Rose when she was young. Those are the Blue River Riveters, said Aunt Rose, the smartest, sassiest, toughest bunch of airplane builders you ever saw. And the best dancers, said the tall woman. I wonder who the Blue River Riveters are. And musicians, yelled a woman's voice from the kitchen. Stop yakking and get that girl in here, shouted another voice. Aunt Rose nudged Rosie towards the kitchen. Don't keep Boss waiting, she said. They stepped into the large kitchen where 5 elderly women with coffee mugs sat around a well-worn table. Well-worn means it's been used a lot, and if it's a well-worn table, so it's been used a lot, it probably means it's full of a lot of love, because people have used the table a lot. Maybe to do their colouring and their homework and their inventing, and also sitting chatting to their friends, maybe discussing ideas or sharing opinions or having nice opinionated arguments. So when something's well worn, it often means that it's been worn down with lots of love. Rosie stepped into the room and they all cheered, Rosie! Suddenly Rosie felt really embarrassed and a bit overwhelmed, and her cheeks got quite hot, and she ducked behind Aunt Rose. Rosie didn't like being the centre of attention. "It's okay, kiddo," said Aunt Rose. "They don't bite." "Oh, except for Letty. When you say somebody doesn't bite, it means they're friendly. It doesn't really mean they bite. But if you say somebody, oh, they don't bite, it means that they're friendly. She's just trying out her new false teeth. False teeth." Aunt Rose slapped her knee and laughed. "Oh, that's a good one. If you're very old, maybe you have to have your teeth removed and they give you false ones, fake ones." Aunt Rose laughed till she wheezed and tears filled her eyes. Rosie relaxed and she smiled. The joke wasn't very funny, but Aunt Rose's laughter was contagious. It means it's like a virus. You can catch her laughter. So if she laughs, you laugh. Soon all the women were laughing, like Aunt Rose. They were loud and full of joy. They were raucous. Aha! The raucous Riveters. So if you laugh a lot and you're loud, you're raucous. Rosie Revere decided that she liked them very much. The woman in the wheelchair cleared her throat, and the others immediately got quiet. Every eye turned towards Rosie, and a twisty feeling crept in her tummy. "Well," said the woman, "what are you going to do?" Rosie looked around nervously. About what?" "What are you going to do about the emergency?" asked the woman. "After all, that's why you're here." Oh. So I have a question for you to think about. Does Rosie know why she's there? And does she know who these people are? And can you predict why she's there and figure out who these people are? Until next chapter, bye-bye.